When it comes to heroism in the DC universe, the Justice League is the first name. But there's one leaguer who, despite his legendary status, hasn't had a win in a long time. That's Green Lantern Hal Jordan, missing from Super Friends, sidelined for Jon Stewart in the Timverse, the subpar 2011 film which has left a foul stench on the character for years. It seems Hal haters have been in full force over at Warner Brothers or whatever they Frankensteined themselves into this year. However, Hal Jordan did get a really great adaptation in the early 10s. The short-lived and underrated Green Lantern the Animated Series. The show was developed by the legendary Bruce Timm, who brought us the classic DC animated universe. Timm brings over his extensive love of DC and translates his iconic style to 3D. It's a style that had a lot of contention when it came out, but I think it's held up better than a lot of the CGI of the time. The show featured a ton of classic characters along with recent additions to the comic canon, and even some original characters that have become fan favorites. It got great reception from fans and was cancelled after one season, mainly due to Ryan Reynolds' film flopping. However, the show still has its fans, one of them being me. I watched the show when it first aired on Cartoon Network's DC Nation block, and judging by this poll, a lot of my subscribers are too. So we'll cover the first season of Green Lantern the Animated Series, covering their war with the Red Lanterns. Before we start, make sure you like and subscribe for more comics content, and let's begin. Episodes 1 and 2 aired as a 1-hour series premiere, making a complete story. It opens on Green Lantern Meten responding to a ship crash. But it's a trap set up by Red Lanterns Zelias, Zox, and Razer. They slay the Lantern and his ring flies off to find a new bearer. We cut to Earth, where pilot Hal Jordan flies an experimental Ferris aircraft. Seeing a train headed toward a collapsed bridge, Hal jumps out of the plane and uses his ring to suit up as the Green Lantern of Earth. He creates a makeshift bridge and saves the train, but the multi-million-dollar plane goes boom against the side of a mountain.
Carol is not going to be happy.
Once back at Ferris Heir, Hal is greeted by a relieved Carol Ferris, president of the company and Hal's will-they-won't-they love interest. Hal's secret space cop adventures keep getting in the way of their romance, and speak of the devil, Hal's ring summons him to Oa, home planet of the Green Lantern Corps. He's greeted by Sergeant Kilowog, who's oh so happy to see his old friend. Hal is briefed by the Guardians of Oa, millennia-old blue gnomes who govern the Corps. The meanest of these gnomes is Appa Aliapsa. Say that 3 times fast. He goes on to scold Hal for his clumsy heroic shenanigans. The friendliest Smurf, Ganthet, vouches for Hal Jordan. This is interrupted by the return of Meten's ring. It reports Meten was killed in the Forgotten Zone, an area of the galaxy outside of the Guardians' main purview. For years, they've sent many lanterns out to the Forgotten Zone to observe and collect information. Many have died. It seems someone is hunting lanterns, and Hal is ready to hunt them down. Problem is, traveling to the Forgotten Zone would take 18 months at least. Why is the Forgotten Zone called that? You'll find out soon. Ganthet is sympathetic to Hal and shows him an experimental ship, one designed to be the fastest craft in the galaxy.
Then why show us this?
I told you, my friends, we're simply taking the scenic route.
As expected, Hal sneaks aboard where he meets the onboard AI system who he affectionately names Aya. He convinces Aya to set off toward the Forgotten Zone, with Kilowog tagging along because he's such a good pal.
Who's trying to stop you? I'm coming with you. Forget anything?
At the same time, a lantern named Sheer Rev is pursued by the Red Lanterns. That's a lot of info dumping and setup, so let's collect ourselves. All this takes place under 15 minutes of runtime, and does a great job of introducing key characters, plot points, and themes. Hal is already an established Green Lantern, which allows us to jump right into the action. We get to see Hal's snarky nature, his heroism, and his clumsiness, all pressed further when scolded by the Guardians. The dynamic between Hal and Carol is clear quickly. Not only is their mutual attraction troubled by the boss-employee relationship, but Hal's duties as a lantern pulls him away from her. We get to Oa within about 5 minutes, which is like 6 times faster than the movie got there. We get a taste of characters central to the plot. Kilowog, the disciplined soldier compared to Hal's loose cannon. Aya, the onboard computer whose naivete makes her a sort of viewer's character point of view. Someone new to the situation who justifies greater explanations of concepts most of the characters would already know. She serves as a blank slate the others can teach their values to. Ganthet and Apsa are also presented as foils. Within about 15 minutes, Green Lantern the Animated Series accomplishes more than most shows do in a whole episode. Heir is subdued and Zolias orders Razer to kill him. A moment of hesitation gives Hal and Kilowog the opportunity to join the fray. During the battle, we learn a key function of lantern rings. They need to be charged using the bearer's personal power battery. Classic Himbo Hal forgot to charge his ring, so his ring powers down to the bare minimum of keeping him alive in space. Hal takes a gamble, leaps onto the interceptor and uses the ship's energy to charge his own ring.
In brightest day and blackest night, no evil shall escape my sight. Let those who worship evil's might beware my power, Green Lantern light!
After bringing Heir aboard the interceptor, the crew report to the Guardians about the Red Lanterns. They seem surprised, but there's the inclination they're familiar with the Reds. The crew plans to return to Oa and come back with reinforcements, but a Red Lantern drone spots them. Hal gives chase to prevent it from revealing their location. They destroy the drone, but a missile strike damages their warp coil, meaning they are stuck in the Forgotten Zone. Heir directs them to his home planet nearby. Zolias and Razer report to the leader of the Red Lanterns, Atrocitus. Zolias is wholly devoted to Atrocitus, but fearful of him. He blames Razer's reluctance to kill as the reason the Green Lanterns escaped. We learn the Reds are devoted to an almost holy mission of revenge against the Guardians of Oa. Turns out, they destroyed Atrocitus' home planet, along with many others in the Forgotten Zone. The remains of Shard is now the Red Lantern base and spaceship, Sacred Ground. On Heir's planet, the crew heal their wounds and plan their next move. There's also this hilarious line about Hal Jordan's mask.
That's Hal's hang-up. That thing on his face, it's a mask. He wears it in case some Earthling sneaks onto the interceptor while we're in space, mind you, and goes, "Aha! The Green Lantern on my planet is Hal Jordan! I'm telling everyone!"
Comedy always pairs with tragedy, and we learn Kilowog's home planet was destroyed. The Red Lanterns arrive, demanding the Greens be turned over or the planet will be destroyed. They claim to be liberating the planet from unjust rule and see the Greens as war criminals. When the Lanterns aren't turned over, Atrocitus unleashes the planetary bomb, the Liberator. He gives Razer the job of activating the bomb, a test of loyalty. Razer believes in the Red Lantern cause, but objects to killing innocents. Atrocitus argues that destroying this planet will make an example for the greater good. With some reluctance, Razer activates the bomb. Heir and Kilowog infiltrate the bomb to disarm it, but they're too late.
Detonation in 30 seconds.
Heir chooses to stay and hold off the blast, while Kilowog and Hal evacuate as many people as they can. Razer returns to kill Heir, but hesitates again. Heir tells Razer there's still hope for him. The planet is destroyed, along with Heir, but at least the citizens made it out. In the remains of the planet, Razer ambushes Hal, but Hal quickly gains the upper hand. Razer goads Hal into killing him, racked with guilt over the planet's destruction and what he believes is a mass murder. But Hal decides imprisonment and atonement is a more fitting punishment. He removes Razer's ring and takes him prisoner on the ship. Episode 2 establishes the dynamic between the Reds and the Greens. In fighting Hal and the Guardians, the Reds are galactic terrorists to most. But to themselves, they are liberating the galaxy from tyrannical genocidal rulers. This becomes a central conflict of the show. What makes something good or evil? What is the difference between heroism and selfish vengeance? Reds like Razer see the Greens as the villains for their destruction of the Forgotten Zone. And to the Green Lanterns, the Reds are villains because they fight the Greens, who fight for peace in the galaxy. When Hal spares Razer, Razer asks if Hal is too weak for vengeance. That line will come back into play in the next episode. In episode 3, Hal urges Razer to join their side against the Reds who have abandoned him.
I do hate the Red Lanterns for what they've made me. But it doesn't mean I stopped hating Green Lanterns. It just means I have more people to hate.
But most of all, Razer hates himself. He thinks he should be executed for his crimes. Aya, in classic computer fashion, finds this illogical, suggesting Razer should seek atonement, make up for his crimes. Not wanting to keep Razer on the ship, the crew travel to the prison planet Grimrock, run by the Spider Guild, which is understandably full of spiders. The warden claims their rehabilitation program has ensured
You'll find that nearly 100% of our former guests never return to a life of crime.
Once the Greens leave, Razer is locked into a strange machine. He's forced to relive the traumatic memory that brought him to the Red Lanterns. Razer once had a wife. His home planet was under threat from warlords, his people living in destroyed cities. He joins the Freedom Militia to fight back, but the warlords find and kill his wife. His rage attracts a Red Lantern ring, and he accepts for the sake of vengeance. The Greens don't get far before they discover a stowaway on their ship, this little goober named Goggin. He claims the spiders are torturing the prisoners. Hal wants to go back for Razer, sparking a small debate between he and Aya.
Intriguing, but criminals must be punished. Surely prisoners deserve their fate.
They deserve justice, which sometimes involves punishment, but not torture.
Knowing the warden won't willingly show them evidence of torture, Hal and Kilowog do a reverse prison break. They notice the yellow rocks covering the prison evoke a sense of fear. They also nullify their power rings, leading to the spider guards capturing them. The warden reveals they not only torture the prisoners, but eat them. Aya senses Hal and Kilowog are in danger and infiltrates the prison through the power lines. She finds Razer and convinces him to help her.
Kilowog was able to rescue the settlers before the world was destroyed.
What? Then I didn't...
Razer retrieves his ring and saves the Greens. The spiders are taken down and Goggin is installed as the new warden. On the ship, Razer chastises Aya for intruding on his memory, for taking the form of his dead wife. Episode 3 focuses on atonement. Despite Razer's crimes, he's still alive, and what he does in response to his guilt will define him. According to Kilowog and Hal, imprisonment and rehabilitation is the answer. For the Spider Guild, these criminals deserve to be tortured and turned into a meal. This gruesome torture and execution is, of course, unjust for most of us. We see a glimpse of hope for Razer. Once freed, he could have taken his ring and escaped with the ship. But he decides his atonement involves saving the people who came to save him and working with them to stop the Red Lanterns. This all presents a nuanced view of justice that will be elaborated on as the show continues. Episode 4 opens on mealtime, with the differences between Razer and Kilowog erupting into a fight, which Hal breaks up.
Come on, shake hands.
The crew receive a distress signal about a captain hitting a pinhole, which is...
It's a microscopic black hole at the center of a whirlpool of energy. The closer that ship gets to the pinhole, the stronger gravity becomes.
It'll compress that cargo ship into a space tighter than a grub worm's vacuole.
The pinhole's gravity makes the Interceptor's tractor beam ineffective, so all three need to go out to manually attach cables to the ship.
Why are we risking 3 lives to save 1?
A Green Lantern protects innocent life even at the risk of their own. That's what we do.
The ship's position is stabilized, but the gravity is too strong to fully pull the ship out. The trio enter the ship to save Captain Gorig, and discover his cargo are the last eggs of a near-extinct species, meaning they need to be saved as well. Razer and Kilowog head to reactivate the ship's core, but they end up squabbling. On the Interceptor, Aya seems to disappear from the ship. Panicking, Captain Gorig activates the boosters, accidentally snapping the towing cables and sending the cargo ship hurtling toward the pinhole. Kilowog flies out to hold the ship in place, while Hal and Razer race towards the reactor, all while the ship threatens to crush them. To complicate things, the hatchlings have hatched, and are eating the ship's power while headed toward the engine. Strangely, the hatchlings are immune to Green Lantern constructs, but not Red Lanterns. Hal and Razer find the engine frozen from a lack of heat. Hal lets the hatchlings in, realizing they aren't the hatchlings, but actually Aya using physical pieces to enter the ship. She powers on the engines, everyone escapes with the ship along with the eggs. On the Interceptor, Aya questions why she can't be a Green Lantern. Kilowog explains that not only must a ring pick you, a Green Lantern needs a body. So Aya constructs one that, if you'll notice, looks suspiciously like Razer's wife. This episode makes it clear that life is precious, whether you're a clumsy captain, a bunch of eggs, or a pig man who eats like Pumbaa. Green Lanterns save lives. It's what they do. It also establishes that Aya is her own person, separate from the ship, which is bound to complicate things moving forward. Episode 5 picks up right where we left off. Aya has a sleek new body that looks suspiciously like Razer's wife. She wants to be a Green Lantern. That will have to wait, as the Interceptor detects a nearby Green Lantern, and they follow it to the planet Batrasis. There they meet Princess Iolande and her brother Prince Ragnar. Iolande is set to be crowned queen, but without a king, any warrior can battle for the title. That warrior is Kothak, who distrusts Green Lanterns and Iolande. Luckily, Kothak's challenge is accepted by the local lantern, Dulok. Setup complete. The episode turns into a mystery when Dulok fails to show up for his battle. He's found dead. His ring is already gone. To help Iolande secure her rule, Hal takes Dulok's place. But he needs to fight without his ring, so Iolande trains him on their cool Star Wars speeder bikes. At the same time, Razer and Aya investigate Dulok's murder.
Are my components properly aligned?
You look fine.
You also look fine.
They determine the ring did not go back to Oa. It's still somewhere in the vicinity, which means somebody already has the ring. The battle between Hal and Kothak begins. Kilowog and Ragnar watch on, trading stories and sharing totally non-alcoholic beverages. That's when Kilowog dies. His ring flies off and chooses Ragnar as its next bearer. That's when he spills the beans. He poisoned Dulok with a totally non-alcoholic drink, but the ring did not come to him, so he moved on to Kilowog. This was all to keep the planet's rule within his family, stealing the power he desperately craved for himself. However, this was a trick. The ring is fake, and Kilowog faked his death. He and Hal suspected Ragnar was the culprit, due to his repeated questioning about how lantern rings worked. Ragnar takes Iolande hostage, only for Iolande to put on the ring and become the true worthy bearer. Ragnar is imprisoned. Kothak bows to Iolande, professing his loyalty and respect to her as queen. The Corps gains a new ally. This episode's focus is on the worthiness of power and authority. Despite the fact that Iolande is competent and entitled to rule, she is restricted by a tradition that forces her to accept the strongest fighter as her husband and king. Batrasis is a place where strength and masculinity are valued above almost all else. Ragnar wants that power too, but lacks the strength, so he turns to trickery and murder to accomplish his goals. In a way, this shows an immense amount of willpower in Ragnar to succeed. When you live on a planet where only the strong can rule, the weak need to turn to desperate strategies to win. This whole situation was birthed out of Batrasis' cultural trappings. But being a Green Lantern isn't just about strength, or cunning, or even will. It's about the values you expose and what you do with those qualities. That's why Iolande was chosen. Her care for her people, her leadership, her level-headedness, and of course her bravery. It shows us that a lantern can come in surprising forms. That fact will become apparent in the next episode. Episode 6 opens on Kilowog lecturing the crew about discipline after a lackluster roll call.
We may be a half the universe away from Oa, but that doesn't mean we can't maintain a little discipline.
Discipline's overrated.
Aya has located Shear's ring on a nearby planet. Problem is, that planet is about to be destroyed by an asteroid. The crew use the interceptor to delay the asteroid, but Kilowog reminds Hal that he recklessly dwindled their ring charges to under 20%, less than field regulations.
Look, I may not have followed all the regs to the letter, but there are people on that planet who need to be rescued, not to mention a Green Lantern. And one Green Lantern can make all the difference.
Can you guess the theme of this episode yet? Arriving on the planet, Aya finds her sensors jammed, so the search continues on foot. They meet 3 castaways, Zartok, Drusa, and Grood, who have been marooned for years. Zartok wields a staff that Kilowog enthusiastically points out.
Only soldiers that fought in the last stand of Thalia's Prime wielded that blade.
I know. I was in that battle.
The team split up. Zartok and Kilowog, Drusa and Aya, Hal and Grood, while Razer goes solo. Grood is a very quiet guy, which makes it all the more unsettling when he hurls Hal over a cliff. The earth rises up to swallow him, but the light from his ring causes the earth to recede. Hal finds Grood, but it seems he was fully overtaken by the earth. Kilowog and Zartok discuss leadership, the Battle of Thalia's Prime. Kilowog hopes Zartok will be the chosen lantern. Drusa marvels over Aya's technology. Distracted, she twists her ankle, so Aya takes her back to the ship. Razer finds another inhabitant, a free-spirit alien named Saint Walker. Walker leads Razer to a ship graveyard and informs him that this planet draws in and holds ne'er-do-wells. He then proceeds to casually humiliate Razer in battle.
Rage has no real power, or taste for that matter.
The Lantern Ring did not choose Walker. He tells Razer that the castaways are, in fact, slavers. Drusa disables Aya and hacks into the ship. While Hal searches for everyone else, the trees start bending, leading him on the right path. Zartok attacks Kilowog, revealing he stole his staff from a murdered soldier as a trophy.
If you were truly a soldier, you would know that blind loyalty is far better than honor or bravery.
Kilowog overpowers Zartok, but Drusa saves him and attacks Kilowog with the interceptor. The slavers fly off and our trio gives chase. The mountains themselves seem to move to crash the ship and is reclaimed. The asteroid is about to hit, but the ring will not fly back to Oa. It seems to try and dig itself into the ground. Hatching a plan, Hal stays behind to give the ring to the actual chosen one, creating a large hole to the core of the planet.
Ordered you off this rock. What are you doing?
I'm disobeying orders.
It's revealed the chosen bearer is the planet itself, named Mogo. Mogo destroys the asteroid with a hyper beam, and the day is saved. He vows his loyalty to the Green Lantern Corps and keeps the castaways prisoner. Loyalty and freedom are at the heart of this episode. Kilowog believes in strict discipline and order, while Hal works off instinct and pushes the limits. Zartok's belief in absolute obedience led him to lose the legendary battle. He sees no blame in himself as a leader, believing his soldiers just weren't loyal enough. This arrogance and disdain for others likely led him to working as a slaver. Now, he's a prisoner on Mogo. A key part of discipline is self-discipline, the ability to regulate one's thoughts and actions given the situation. Obedience is simply following orders. Discipline is following your resolve. This kind of thinking is shown in Saint Walker, who rejects the rage of the Red Lanterns and the reactionary willpower of the Green Lanterns. Fans of the Jeff Johns era of Green Lantern will know what the appearance of Saint Walker leads to, but let's not spoil too much. Mogo is also a fan favorite in the Green Lantern canon. He was actually created by Alan Moore, the guy who did Watchmen, V for Vendetta, and a ton of other stuff. Moore's story was even adapted in the film Green Lantern Emerald Knights. Now let's move on to episode 7. The Interceptor crew has been stalking Shard for weeks.
Yep, waste dump at 0600 means solar time. Like clockwork.
Razer is fed up with waiting, saying Atrocitus would simply hunt them down and kill them.
You have no chance of victory if you aren't willing to die for your cause.
He's also stressed that his ring is running out of charge. Razer leaves the ship but is stopped by Aya.
I know you are not evil.
But Razer sets off an explosion, disabling the ship, and flies off. However, Aya finds the alerts to be false. The explosion was mostly just a smoke show, a distraction. Razer lands on Shard and recharges his ring. He's allowed a meeting with Atrocitus and takes the opportunity to kill him, sacrificing his own life to make up for his sins. But the charging process from before was sabotaged, meaning Razer is powerless. His torture begins. Realizing Razer is gone, the others sneak onto Shard to rescue him. Aya infiltrates the vents in bug form toward the control center of Shard. Hal disguises himself as a Red Lantern guard. He meets Cleric Loran, who resides in a church devoted to spreading the gospel of the Red Lanterns. The people of Ismal were approached by the Guardians of Oa, but they refused to bow to them, as Loran says. Then, the Guardians sent their robotic manhunters to lay siege to the planet and the rest of the Forgotten Zone as punishment. From this destruction, the first Red Lantern was born, Atrocitus, his rage creating the first Red Lantern ring. His followers were the remnants of the Forgotten Zone, themselves filled with righteous rage, determined to liberate their world from the tyranny of the Guardians. Kilowog is captured and taken to Atrocitus by a disguised Hal. With Aya's help, they free Razer. He manages to charge his ring and a brawl begins.
I know you'd willingly die today, but do you have the strength to live for a cause? Because we sure could use you right now.
Aya is taken hostage by Atrocitus. Razer convinces Hal to take an injured Kilowog back to the ship while he rescues Aya from Atrocitus. The two fight, and Atrocitus reveals he was leading the warlord forces that laid waste to Razer's planet. He saw potential in Razer as a warrior. He instructed the warlords to kill his wife, activating his great rage and enlisting him into the Red Lanterns. Razer overpowers Atrocitus, but spares his life. He returns the damaged Aya to the ship, and they all escape. Atrocitus now knows that the Green Lanterns are alive. And worse, Aya downloaded files from Shard, showing the Reds have an army of warships that are headed towards Oa. This episode focuses on the lengths you'll go in the name of a cause and the value of those actions. Razer planned to sacrifice himself in order to kill Atrocitus, a way to atone for the crimes he committed as a Red Lantern. But as we saw in episode 2, all life is precious, even the malicious Red Lanterns. Sacrificing your life should only be done as a last resort, such as Lantern Shear did. Razer's sacrifice is in a way selfish, a way to relieve himself of guilt and pain through a heroic death. But all he accomplishes is blowing the Green's cover. Compare this to Shear, who gave his life for an entire population. We now have a more in-depth understanding of the Red Lanterns, and it skews our view of them. The Red Lanterns are willing to cause chaos, destruction, and death because they see liberation from the Guardians of Oa as a just cause. To them, the Guardians are tyrants and mass murderers. Their supposedly peace-seeking Green Lantern Corps is just an army to ensure their rule. After the apocalyptic destruction of their entire sector, this belief took on a religious aspect with churches, ceremonies, choirs, and clerics. Atrocitus is positioned as a legendary hero, perhaps even a Jesus-like figure, leading the destroyed remnants of the Forgotten Zone toward salvation. Atrocitus is willing to conquer planets, manipulate, and murder in order to further his cause. It calls into question the nature of evil, and asks us as viewers to rethink history from the point of view of the inhabitants of the Forgotten Zone. As Ganthit said in a previous episode, history is written by the victor. Episode 8 begins with the crew running low on food. Luckily, Aya detects a nearby planet with suitable food. Hal uses an edible biomass detector while Kilowog takes a cue from Toucan Sam.
When it comes to food, I follow my nose.
Another split of personalities between Hal and Kilowog. While searching, Kilowog finds a lady alien foraging, and is immediately smitten. This is interrupted when floating jellyfish monsters attack, knocking out Kilowog. While flying, Hal's ring suddenly fails, and he's left to forage on foot. He tries to eat the local food to comical results. He encounters the same jellyfish monsters, and finds his ring has no effect on them. Kilowog has a nightmare of his planet exploding, the death of his family. He awakens in the home of Galatea, the hot alien from earlier. In the village, Kilowog's tales of heroism lead the people to ask Kilowog to save them from the Nadara, those jellyfish monsters. They've been stealing the yellow ore they use for weapons, clothes, soup, everything. Kilowog agrees to train the villagers in combat. On the Interceptor, Aya interrupts Razer charging his ring. He's ashamed that he has to use Atrocitus's oath for the recharge. Aya develops an oath with the same tempo and rhyming scheme as the Red Lantern oath. Razer thanks her, though it's clear the new oath won't actually work.
I wish it were that easy.
One of the Nadara leads Hal to a quarry containing a mass of yellow crystals, the same kind found at the prison Grimrock. Since the villagers use this crystal in everything, it means they're slowly being poisoned with fear and paranoia. This is what's causing the nightmares for Kilowog. And this paranoia and fear pushes him to launch an attack on the Nadara. Hal intercepts Kilowog and eventually gets the yellow gear off him. Realizing the Nadara have been trying to help them, the people toss away their crystals and make peace. The Nadara give the lanterns a store of food. Kilowog promises to return for Galatea someday. These yellow crystals, they're back again. What could they mean? If you're familiar with Green Lantern lore, you know exactly what they mean. But again, spoilers. The purpose here is to show the effect of fear on the mind, and the danger of relying too much on instinct. The villagers' use of the yellow crystals made them fearful of the Nadara, who were trying to get the poison crystals away from them. But since the Nadara can't speak, understanding could not be reached. That in turn leads to violence. Again, we're asked to question our immediate perception of good and bad, especially against creatures we don't fully understand. And it again shows us how the best of intentions can go awry. Episode 9 opens with Kilowog lovesick over Galatea. Hal tries to relate by mentioning Carol, but this doesn't last long as the ship is attacked by a giant tentacle monster. The beast is chased off by violet lanterns, star sapphires who channel the power of love. Their leader Agapo and niece Gieta invite the crew to their homeworld. Immediately, Gieta is all over Hal. We cut back to Galea. By the way, last episode when I kept saying Galatea, that's wrong. It was Galea. Sorry about that. Cutting to Galea, a pink ring greets her. Agapo's people were once the same as the Guardians of Oa, but the Guardians refused to accept emotions, so there came a split. Now the Sapphires are an entirely female force, finding their ways as a stopgap against wars. Kilowog finds Galea in a Star Sapphire uniform. She offers him a gift.
Something to keep our love alive and thriving forever.
Aya immediately senses Kilowog's ring has been put in stasis, which means shenanigans are afoot. Agapo chastises Gieta for not seducing Hal.
Hal Jordan is different from any other male I've met. I've never felt like this.
She has known him for 15 minutes tops. The Sapphires look into Hal's heart and find his love for Carol, who thinks Hal is dead. A pink ring greets her. Razer approaches the palace to investigate Kilowog's disappearance and is allowed in, but not Aya, who continues the search outside. She finds him trapped in a field of crystals, all containing love-struck men. She's attacked by Galea and others. Carol arrives on Zamaron through a pink portal and finally discovers Hal is Green Lantern.
Can't believe I was ever fooled by this stupid mask.
But she sees Gieta and...
"'Cause your little tramp here is in the same outfit!"
Oh, damn!
Hal helps Carol come back to her senses.
You can keep him here, safe from harm, safe from the war. The power of your love can hold him here.
Oh, honey, that's not love, that's selfishness. Real love is sacrifice, putting another's needs before your own, doing what's best for the person you love.
Carol gives up the ring and is sent back to Earth. Hal frees Kilowog and they go to rescue Aya and Razer, who are under attack from the Sapphires. Gieta interrupts, saying that the Sapphires' view of love is flawed and that they must free the men.
The galaxy will know peace only when all men have been gentled by love's violet light.
Agapo peers into Razer's mind and makes him realize Aya has based her form on his wife. As they all escape, the beast from earlier attacks, under control of Agapo, but Gieta subdues the beast so the lanterns can escape.
I am disappointed in you, Gieta. You have much to learn.
No, my queen. I have much to teach.
So we get in another emotion-based Lantern Corps, this one focusing on love. The Zamarons are a divergent race from the Guardians. One valued logic, the other valued emotion. We see in Agapo how a usually positive emotion like love can become destructive. Just about anything has its positive and negatives. And with the negative side of love comes obsession, selfishness, fear, jealousy, and even hate in the form of Agapo's misandrist understanding of war. Once again, we see how Green Lantern challenges preconceived notions. That there isn't so much inherent good and evil in the world, so much as the actions people take. Episode 10 opens back on Betrasis. Iolande visits her brother Ragnar in prison, hoping to reconcile.
I hate you! I'll destroy you all!
His rage attracts a Red Lantern ring. On Oa, Sade and Ganthit watch as every lantern on the planet is sent to the Forgotten Zone on orders from Apsa. But they won't arrive to help for a year and a half. The Interceptor receives a distress call from Iolande. Red Lanterns are attacking Betrasis. The crew arrive to find Ragnar on the throne, dressed as a Red Lantern, and he has other Red Lanterns working under him. Outnumbered, the crew flee only to find their ship captured. They find the warrior Kothak leading an army of resistance fighters. A Liberator bomb has been deployed and is set to go boom. Hal and Kilowog contact Ganthit and Sade for help, asking them to tell the Red Lanterns that the story of the Manhunters is just propaganda. But the story of the Manhunters is real. The Manhunters were created before the Green Lantern Corps. Their total lack of emotions should have made them great peacekeepers. Instead, their cold lack of empathy turned them into a genocidal army. Ganthit believes the only path forward is for the Guardians to admit their crimes. Apsa is against this, refusing to let the order they've created fall apart. Ganthit reveals he left something on the Interceptor, something that could help the Lanterns, something involving hope and will. The Guardians of Oa gather for a meeting, and in a shocking twist, Apsa accuses Ganthit of betrayal of the Guardians, all for allowing Hal to steal the Interceptor and experimenting with the unstable hope emotion. He is sent off-world in a ship.
I almost feel the base emotion pity for you.
Only almost, though, Appa? And there's the pity.
But Sade brings him back. With Iolande freed, she, Hal, and Kilowog head for the Liberator bomb, with Razer and Aya leading the resistance fighters in battle. On Oa, Sade and Ganthit activate his invention, a blue lantern, which supercharges Green Lantern powers and disables red rings. The Red Lanterns flee, and the Greens use their boosted power to hurl the Liberator into space. The day is saved, yet Ganthit still leaves Oa.
I wonder if what we did today helped.
It did. I can feel it.
Telepathy, Ganthit?
No. Hope.
So we're doing some backtracking, using established characters to build upon the story. This makes the show's galaxy feel like a real place with living people whose lives impact each other. The Reds are preparing for their invasion of Guardian space by retracing the Interceptor's steps, collecting allies along the same way their enemies did. It shows the Red Lanterns are not just mindless brutes, but an army with a plan. We get more talk of hope, and we see that this emotion can boost the power of a Green Lantern, and disable Red Lanterns. This is a boost they'll need as the Armada draws closer. Episode 11 opens on Bleez trying to open something called the Lighthouse. However, the Red Lantern's attempts fail. On the Interceptor, Hal still can't find his Lantern power battery, which I didn't know was a thing could happen. In recent comics, Greens can just summon their lanterns through like a portal. It's not really something you can lose. But this is Hal Jordan. He finds a way. Apsa phones in to explain the lighthouse is an ancient piece of technology from old gods of the universe. It acts as a gateway between the Forgotten Zone and Oa, surrounded by a dangerous asteroid field called the Maelstrom. A Green Lantern named Tavris was sent there months ago to investigate, but never returned. The Reds are planning to lead their armada through it as a shortcut, so Apsa orders them to destroy the lighthouse. Hal gets the idea to find Tavris, and Aya confirms Tavris is locked up on Grimrock. They arrive on the prison and are greeted by the new warden, Goggin. In the prison, the yellow crystals overwhelm Aya, so Razer takes her back to the entrance. They find Tavris, and he's dead. Kilowog collects his ring. Luckily, Tavris left a message scratched into the stone. If you want to go to the lighthouse, free Bith Rock. Goggin inks himself and explains Bith is a Thanagarian pirate. His whole crew is locked away in a special area of the prison where they basically play Fight Club all day. By the way, the episode is called Flight Club. Very clever. Hal and Kilowog enter the Hawkmen's lair to find Bith chained up. He lost his leadership in combat against a big guy named Bumpy. Tavris left his lighthouse code with Bith, who was his former cellmate. But he'll only give over the code if they beat Bumpy and make Bith leader again. Kilowog fights Bumpy, but Bumpy plays dirty and whoops him. Hal fights Bumpy and exploits his weaknesses to win. Bith is leader again, but changes the deal at the last minute.
So, in exchange for the code to the lighthouse, I want freedom for myself, freedom for my men, and Tavris' Green Lantern ring.
The Reds arrive at the prison looking for Bith. Goggin inks himself again. Bumpy pretends to be the warden to lead the Reds on a goose chase. Hal and Bith reach a deal and shake on it. Bith gives him the access code. As they escape, Bith sneaks off and rats out the crew in exchange for treasure. He takes the interceptor and heads to the Maelstrom, using the real code to activate the lighthouse. But this was all a ruse. Knowing Bith would lie, the crew placed one of those memory headbands on Bith, programmed for him to go to the lighthouse himself and reveal the real code. The Thanagarians are freed, and the Reds give chase. The crew use this time to escape and head toward the lighthouse. This episode sets up the lighthouse, an important set piece to come. It also deals with honesty and how to handle people who are wholly untrustworthy. Bith is constantly lying and backstabbing to advance his own goals. But we see this only dooms him and everyone around him further. He's imprisoned on Grimrock. His crew beat the crap out of him to take his leadership away. And by the end of the episode, he's captured by the Reds. Bith has no real allies, only momentary beneficiaries. For people like this, sometimes you need to be a bit underhanded yourself. Not the greatest moral lesson, but hey, whatever. Episode 12 opens on Bith getting his just desserts as the Reds torture him for the code to the lighthouse. Bith continues bargaining.
1,000.
We're back with Saint Walker. He once received a vision that the savior against the Red Lanterns would be found on Mogo.
Who is the savior? And where do I find him or her?
Mogo shows Walker a tall mountain. The Interceptor crew enters the Maelstrom to destroy the lighthouse. The lighthouse's defenses trap their ship, and they are ambushed by Red Lanterns. Overwhelmed, the crew makes a tactical retreat. Atrocitus arrives on Mogo, picking up Zartok and Drusa. Walker wants to intervene, but Mogo urges him to continue his climb. Aya detects the Red Lantern armada heading for the lighthouse. She determines she can sneak into the lighthouse by staying in the surrounding beams. She succeeds and reprograms the defenses to repel the Red Lanterns. The rest of the crew successfully get into the lighthouse.
You're right. You're not a rookie anymore.
Razer rigs the lighthouse's power source to detonate, and boom. Despite this, Atrocitus plans to charge the lighthouse.
What?
Zelias's concerns are met with a boot to the face. Multiple Liberators are launched into the Maelstrom, and the Reds chase the Interceptor. Cue ship battle. The Greens escape, and best of all, the Ultra Warp coil is repaired. Atrocitus' ship makes it through, but it is thoroughly damaged. Hal, Kilowog, and Razer enter the ship to arrest the Reds, only to find it empty, and boom. Lots of explosions this episode. Walker arrives at the peak of the mountain and finds no one. but he still refuses to give up.
I believe. I will fight the Red Lanterns, no matter how many may come. All will be well.
His hope and resilience is rewarded in the form of a blue lantern and ring. The Blue Lantern Corps of Hope is born. Hal, Kilowog, and Razer survived the explosion, but the Reds used the opportunity to sneak on board the Interceptor, and Drusa uses her technical skills to take control of Aya. They ultra-warp to Oa, leaving the others stranded. The Liberators launched earlier detonate, blasting a hole in the maelstrom large enough for the Armada to come through.
Jordan, what are we gonna do?
I don't know. I just don't know.
The penultimate episode of the season is an action-packed, fast-moving plot that doesn't dwell on moral lessons or themes like the previous episodes, but sets up major plot points for our season finale. We finally get a resolution to all that hope talk seeded throughout the season, as Saint Walker dons a blue ring and says his iconic line, "All will be well." With Oa's lanterns away, Atrocitus warping in, and the crew left to face an armada on their own, we are at what is called
The all is lost moment!
Our final episode of the season is here. As the horde of Red Lantern ships approach, Kilowog elects to hold off the Armada at the entrance to the Maelstrom, while Hal and Razer launch an undisclosed plan. Atrocitus arrives on Oa, using Aya to gain entrance. They launch a siege on the Guardian stronghold.
This perhaps is not unlike what the people of the Forgotten Zone experienced at the hands of our manhunters.
Hal meets with Carol on Earth, and he seems to have some memory issues.
What's a Green Lantern?
Carol remembers Green Lantern told her about his power battery, and guesses it will be located in Hal's Ferrous Air locker. Hal recharges his ring, which unlocks his memories. Hal and Razer travel to Zamron and used their love-powered teleportation to get Hal to Earth, so he would be closer to Oa. It scrambled his eggs a bit, but he's all good now. Kilowog is on his last legs against the Armada, until Walker arrives and blue kung fu's an entire battleship while supercharging Kilowog. Cavalry comes in the form of Mogo. Walker supercharges Mogo, and he wipes out the entire Armada and the Liberators. Atrocitus breaches the Guardian stronghold, but luckily Hal arrives just in time, and does something unexpected.
You're right. What the Manhunters did to your sector was a tragedy. Your rage is earned. But destroying life here isn't going to change what happened there. Let's work together to find a solution, a way to make things better for the people of the Forgotten Zone. Let us help.
Atrocitus literally spits in his face. Drusa is reprogramming Aya to remove her sentience when Razer arrives to save her, emerging from a Star Sapphire portal. Hal and Atrocitus duke it out in a brutal fight. Hal comes out on top. Oh, by the way, there's a Gurren Lagann reference in this fight. Check it out. With Atrocitus defeated, Hal again offers peace to Zalias, who still distrusts the Lanterns, until Opsa vows to go to the Forgotten Zone and begin restitution, acknowledging the crime of the Guardians. Zalias agrees. Atrocitus is imprisoned, and Opsa thanks Hal.
But I've got to get back to Earth.
You have just averted an intergalactic war. What on Earth could possibly be more important than that?
Dessert.
Green Lantern the Animated Series is a truly underrated gem, and I'm not talking about Star Sapphires. DC's animated shows have always been great, but Green Lantern manages to modernize and elevate the formula with a surprisingly nuanced view of good and evil and conflict. While the Greens are presented as heroic, we learn that heroism and justice are more than just about power and intentions. The Guardians believed totally in logic and order, so they created emotionless manhunter robots to police the galaxy. This led to the massacre of the Forgotten Zone. To save face and maintain order, the Guardians quarantined the Forgotten Zone and struck it from history, leaving its inhabitants alone to rebuild. This destruction and abandonment made way for Atrocitus and gave a religious fervor to his righteous mission, which led to the birth of the Red Lantern Corps. Atrocitus felt his rage was justified. Taking down the Green Lanterns would liberate the galaxy from mass murderers, so doing things like empowering warlords, manipulating your allies, and your own mass murder were just necessary evils to right a wrong. You could easily argue Atrocitus is worse than the Guardians. But imagine saying that to someone whose entire family and people were killed by Guardian soldiers and then left to fend for themselves, with only Atrocitus coming to give you power and purpose. The sides aren't given labels of right and wrong. Their viewpoints and grievances are all appreciated and respected. In real-world history, there are tons of examples of smaller armies looking to overthrow the current regime, determined to right some perceived wrong. Sometimes the smaller army wins and their rule is worse than their predecessors. Sometimes liberation leads to prosperity and peace. And most of the time, it's a messy mixed bag. Considering the time period Green Lantern the Animated Series came out, it's time we acknowledged a real-world event that likely influenced the creators. The Iraq War. Al-Qaeda agents of Osama bin Laden from Iraq crashed planes into the World Trade Center towers. This is one of the deadliest terror attacks in U.S. history. America went to war with Iraq with huge support from the public, especially with the intel that their collaborator Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. This would lead to the longest warfare campaign in U.S. history so far. In reality, Saddam Hussein was a secular leader, non-religious. Bin Laden was a radical Islamist who hated Hussein. They both hated the US, but were not allies either. They opposed each other. Yet the flimsy connections between them meant the crimes of one group were applied to the other. And in the years that followed, it was found that Iraq never had weapons of mass destruction. And in fact, it seems our government knew this the entire time. Going back further in history, we have to focus on the Mujahideen. They were a group of freedom fighters in the 80s who fought back against Soviet invasion with support of the US Reagan administration, who provided CIA training, money, and weapons. This was called Operation Cyclone. However, as time went on, the Mujahideen became religious extremists, leading their own brutal campaigns in their home countries, and eventually they evolved into the Taliban, who helped figures like bin Laden rise to power, which brought us to 9/11. The immense destruction of the Iraq War, along with simultaneous conflicts, gave rise to terror groups like ISIS, who believed they were freedom fighters, liberating their country from invaders, and went on to conduct their own terrible violence. The Iraq War officially ended around the time that Green Lantern the Animated Series came out. I gave this abridged history lesson to show how real-world politics and actions often defy black and white thinking. All of history is a series of domino lines. Everything is a consequence of the other, and sometimes those consequences won't be seen for years or decades. When crimes are not addressed and restitution is not given, it begins a cycle of injustice that explodes into mass violence and death over and over. When everyone thinks they're the hero of the story, anything can be justified. This nuanced approach to right and wrong is seen in Green Lantern, turning a standard superhero affair into a space drama of gray morality and galaxy-wide consequences. It's a seriousness I wish more superhero stories would adapt. And while I love a good comic book adaptation, I always advocate for reading the source material. So, here's the stories that inspired the show. Of course, you can start with the Silver Age Green Lantern series, which introduces us to Hal Jordan, bringing in characters like Carol Ferris's Star Sapphire, the Guardians' Kilowog, and the Yellow Weakness, which is alluded to in the show. Never hurts to start from the foundation and build yourself upward. But the largest influence on the show is the run of Green Lantern helmed by writer Jeff Johns. It begins with Green Lantern Rebirth. the 2004 story, not the 2016 series. Hal Jordan is revived from the dead. It's revealed the events of Emerald Twilight and Zero Hour were caused by possession of the fear entity Parallax, which was also the explanation of the yellow weakness. Fellas, whatever you do, do not start with Emerald Twilight and Zero Hour. Worst mistake of my life. They are late game stories, very famous ones, but without spoiling much, reading them first will give you a very warped perception of Hal Jordan as a character. Jeff Johns introduced the emotional spectrum of Lantern Corps. The Green Lanterns were always based on willpower, but he brought in reds for rage, blue for hope, violet for love, recontextualizing the classic Star Sapphire concept. Orange for greed, which will appear in Season 2, yellow for fear, alluded to multiple times in this season, and indigo for compassion, which you'll have to read the comics for that one. The Red Lanterns even got their own series around the same time the show came out. Johns' run extends into a bunch of others. Peter Tomasi's Green Lantern Corps follows the other Lanterns, with focus on Guy Gardner and Kyle Rayner. This was actually the first full comic run I ever read and caught up with during the Brightest Day run. Speaking of which, Johns took words from the Green Lantern Oath and made Brightest Day and Blackest Night into major DC events. That grumpy Guardian Apsa actually traveled with Hal Jordan in Green Lantern Green Arrow Hard Traveling Heroes. It follows Hal and Oliver Queen traveling across America dealing with grounded social issues like racism and drug addiction. Apsa tags along and learns a lot about what human life is like. The various corps are brought together in one book in Green Lantern New Guardians. And if you happen to find anything regarding a guy named Relic, do not read that until you read the other stuff. Thank you all for sticking with me through this season. If you want me to cover Season 2, make sure you like this video, subscribe, and leave a comment so that I know there's demand for this kind of content. Check out my other videos. I've also covered Doom Patrol's first 2 seasons. And join the King Rex Discord to get in on comic book discussions. We'll be glad to have you. And until next time, my fellow Corps mates, keep on reading.